Good morning.
Down here. Morning.
And on behalf of the Manatee County branch of the NAACP and the law enforcement community of Manatee County, we welcome you to this forum, an opportunity for the community and law enforcement to have a meaningful dialogue and conversation about your concerns as it relates to the work and functioning of law enforcement in this community. This program is called Bridging the Gap, and there's a definite need for all of us to have a better understanding of one another. The Bible teaches us that in all our getting, we should get understanding. So hopefully this morning, this will be an opportunity for you to gain greater understanding of how the various organizations work and function in relation to the community at large. We want to open up with a prayer. Pastor James, did he make it? There he is. Praise God. Give him a hand as he comes forward.
Hey, Pastor.
Morning, let us bow our heads. Heavenly Father, we come before you in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Thank you for this opportunity that we have to come out into dialogue. In your word, you tell us how can we walk together unless we agree to meet and to talk about the things that trouble us. Father, we pray that as we open up our hearts and our minds to speak to one another this morning, that we both listen, that we hear, and that we listen and hear not just so that we can tell our side of the story, Lord, that we can be open to one another's hearts and issues, Lord. And we pray most of all, Lord, that as we continue to have these sessions, Lord, that you'll just draw us closer together and help us to understand that while we have issues, Lord, that we can solve them if we work together. And Father, you know that dividing line, and we pray that you'll bring us to that place where we not just communicate and talk, but where we will cross over to become and do the people and the things that you would have us to do. And it's in the mighty name of Jesus we pray. Amen.
Amen.
We're going to bring up Miss Alexandrina Green to do introductions. Ms. Green?
Good morning. As Dr. Holly said, my name is Alexandrina Green. I'm the Chief Operating Officer here at United Community Centers, operating the 13th Avenue Dream Center, the Manatee Metro Action Plan, and the Manatee Mustang Sports Academies. Introductions are my task today. So first, I'd like to introduce the Strategic Planning Committee for this event. That includes Ms. Susie Copeland, representing the Manatee County NAACP. Mrs. Shirley Pearson, representing Mount Carmel Resource Center, Palmetto. Lieutenant John Morrell, Manatee County Sheriff's Office, but also representing the Manatee Metro Action Plan Crime Reduction Team. Next, I'd like to introduce the elected officials that are with us today. County Commissioner John Chappie, County Commissioner Robin DiSabatino, Bradenton City Councilman Harold Byrd, and also honoring former Commissioners Pat Glass and Gwendolyn Brown. School Board Member Charlie Kennedy. I'm so sorry. Lastly, the panel. We have Chief Rick Wells representing Palmetto Police Department, Chief Razalowski representing the Bradenton Police Department, Sheriff Stubbe, Manatee County Sheriff's Office, and Mr. Larry Eager from the Public Defender's Office. And if I have omitted anybody, please charge that to my head and not my heart. And if you are an elected official and I didn't recognize you, if you just wave your hand, we'd like to give you your recognition at this time. Otherwise, my task is done. Enjoy your day.
I think that was Commissioner Bustle just coming through the door. Let's give him a little recognition as well. We want you to know that often one of the barriers to effective law enforcement in the community is a lack of communication on the part of law enforcement to the community and on the part of the community to law enforcement. That's what Bridging the Gap is all about. Building a bridge of communication between the entities that have a need to discuss the issues of the day. And that's why we're here this morning. So we want to make sure that you all are open and honest, that you use this opportunity to dialogue, and hopefully we can come to some understanding of one another and even maybe some resolution. We never know. So Ms. Susie Copeland, where art thou? She's coming forward to explain the process to you. Give her a hand. This is the president of the Manatee County NAACP. Amen.
Thank you, Dr. Holly. The process that we're using this morning, on your table there are some index cards. If you have any questions, any comments you would like to make, they will be given to the facilitator, Dr. Holly. He will ask the panel. Panel also has some index cards because they may have questions for the community, and we want the community to give their input as well. So if you have some questions, please write them on the card and give them to the facilitator. And if you need more cards, we do have them. So that is this process. We're trying to make it as smooth and as amenable as we possibly can. We know sometimes in our discussion, because of our emotions, we get very emotional about problems or situations that we're involved in. And when that happens, communication actually shuts down. So we want to keep this communication, this line open. And so this is the forum that we've set for today. So if you have any questions, have any comments, please write them on the card, give them to Dr. Holly. Dr. Holly will then address the panel. Thank you so very much.
And then in the interest of keeping it orderly, what we'll ask you to do, if you have a question, raise your card up and Sister Copeland or one of her representatives will come and get it and bring it to the front. That way we won't have to have a lot of traffic back and forth. The other ground rule that I want to lay is if you want to say something, raise your hand, be recognized, and then others, I'm asking you to respect that person. We're not here for a grand debate, but simply dialogue. Dialogue is one speak, one listen, one speak, one listen. Amen?
Amen.
All right. With that said, we want to give the panelists an opportunity to make some opening remarks on what we have going on here in Manatee County in terms of crime, violence, and those issues that would concern you. And this will set a basis or a groundwork for us to proceed from that point. We'll open up with Sheriff Brad Stubbe.
Well, thank you, Pastor. Can you hear me in the back okay? I want to make sure that I'm leaning into the microphone. Listen, can you look at this face and consider a head of hair? At about 50 years ago when I played fast-pitch softball out here on these fields. And the reason I tell you that is because I've been in this community since I was 7 years old. I grew up here, and I believe in this community. And I believe we live in a great community. The last 3 years, I want to start with crime, and I'm going to be brief because I know we want to get to the questions. But 3 years ago, we had a 16% decrease in crime in Manatee County. I have a crime meeting with my folks every Tuesday afternoon, and I sat down that next January and I said, how in the world are we going to repeat this? Because a 16% decrease in crime is really phenomenal. And then the year after that, we had a 3% decrease. And then last year in 2014, we had another 6% decrease in crime. And I think that you'll hear the same thing from the police departments as well. You can only accomplish that by working together with your community. You have to help us help you. We can't do it with the number of eyes and ears that we have. We need you. And that's why I think we live in a great community, because we cooperate with one another, we develop friendships, we develop bonds, we develop relationships. But there's always one thing, and that's why we're here today. We can always improve upon those, and that's why we're here today. Thank you.
Next, we will hear from Bradenton Police Chief Mike Rasolowski.
The city of Bradenton is basically the same as the sheriff's office. For 2014, we had a slight decrease in crime. The slight decrease was in violent crime, mainly in East Bradenton. But over the last 10 years, crime has gone down about 40% in the city of Bradenton. Now, it's nice to talk about statistics and how well we're succeeding in reducing crime, but a lot of crime has to do with perception and where you live. If you don't feel safe in your house, it doesn't make any difference how well we do statistically. We still have a lot of work to do. We want to work with each and every neighborhood to make you feel safe, because that's our job. The City of Bradenton Police Department works on 3 issues: policing for prevention, because we want to stop crime from even happening. We want to police in a community manner, and we want to provide excellent customer service no matter who shows up at your door, whether it's a white officer, a black officer, or a Hispanic officer.
Good morning. First, let me thank all of you for being here. I want to thank Susie Copeland. I want to thank Ms. Shirley Pearson. Pastor Holly, thank you so much for facilitating this. The crime in Palmetto has been down for the last 4 years, but we have really tried to go beyond that. We have tried to build relationships in our community, and like Chief Raz said, crime may be down in some areas, but in other areas they may not see that as a reality. Excuse me. So we have tried to put people in place in our community. We have a very diverse community in the city of Palmetto, and as an agency, I have to represent that. I have to be able to adapt to the different cultures that we have in our city. So we've done a pretty decent job at making sure that we have officers in place to handle problems. Not worry about arrest, not worry about making contacts, but just making and building relationships throughout the community and handling problems before they become major issues. And that's really where we are now, working every day to build trust and to handle small problems before they become major problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Wells. And now we're going to hear from our public defender for the 12th Judicial Circuit, Mr. Larry Eager.
Good morning, everyone. I guess I'm that fly in the ointment, and I'm supposed to come here and be the counterbalance to the 3 gentlemen to my left, your right. I'm here to say that we do have reduction in crime, but I ask at what costs? And I think that we really have to reevaluate our criminal justice system. There are a number of things that really stand out, and that is, I'm sorry, can you hear me now? I feel like a telephone commercial. All right, here we go. This country boasts the highest incarceration rate of any country in the world. With that, understand that in 1972, there were 300,000 people incarcerated. Today, we boast 2.3 million. We have 7 million people on parole and probation, and 1 out of 3 blacks between the age of 18 and 30 are either in jail, prison, probation, or parole. And I think that in order for there to be justice, there has to be equality in that justice. And as public defender, my function is to represent those individuals who've been accused of a crime, who are facing a jail sentence and cannot afford legal representation. And in this circuit, that comprises probably between 80 to 85% of all cases. As a matter of fact, we opened last year approximately 30,000 cases, and I have 42 attorneys to handle all of that. So there needs to be the conversation, and we need to address what is the most effective way to both enhance public safety, be fiscally responsible, but provide equality of justice. Thank you.
We thank each of these gentlemen for their opening comments. And I guess the first question to any and all of you is, how do you perceive the relationship between the community and your agencies?
Well, I guess I'll start for the city of Bradenton. When I first came to the city of Bradenton about 12 years ago, there was a total disconnect and a total distrust between the community and the police department. We've made a lot of inroads over the years because of our community policing philosophy. It's not a program, it's a philosophy from the chief on down that we try and keep the same officers in the same neighborhoods day in and day out. And I say I've seen progress because over the years, the officers have seen these little kids that were out playing grow up to be our young men in the community. And the more often we can interact with the community and they with us, to be familiar with who each other are, the better off our communications are. And we have seen a great deal of increased communication between the neighborhood officers and the residents they serve, because some of the officers even give the neighborhood their cell phone number. So a lot of times, instead of calling the police, they call their neighborhood officer and tell them what's going on. So we still have a lot of work to do. There's still a lot of distrust in the community, but we're striving to bridge that gap, and things have gotten better, but we have a lot of work to do in the city of Bradenton.
I would just say, Larry probably does not believe this, but I agree with what Larry says. I agree with a lot of what Larry says. In fact, in the city of Palmetto, we started working together several years ago with local pastors and concerned citizens in the community that want to try to help break that chain, bring down that recidivism that we have in our society, and really try to work with helping these young men that come out of jail, come out of prison, and really have nowhere to go and absolutely no help to keep them going down the right highway and not going back into a life of crime. So, that's been a challenge. It really has been, because so often we have a young man that comes to us that needs help, and it's difficult to find jobs for these young men when they have a felony on their record. So we really have tried to work on getting them bonded, working with several employers throughout the county that will give them a job and allow them to go back to work. Because let's face it, if you have a family and you can't get a job and you don't have any money, you're going to do whatever you have to do to provide for your family. So we work very hard trying to break that chain so we can keep them out of jail, keep them from repeating a crime. And, let's face it, after a period of time, jail is going to be the least of your worries. You're going to be going to prison. So we're trying very, very hard to keep that from reoccurring.
Community-oriented policing is something that we believe in as well. We broke the county into 3 patrol districts about 8 years ago and put each one of those districts in charge of a captain with the availability to take care of what needs to be taken care of as far as the crime goes. But they also go to a number of community meetings. I see the Commissioner DeSabatino is here, and the folks that actually work in the patrol district go to all of the community meetings and assist her as well as the residents with any problems that we have. That way it puts a face on the person that you can actually contact. You can call my office and call me and tell me the problem, but then I'm going to call the captain in that patrol district or the investigator in that patrol district and give them the same information. So we want you to have that contact with one another on a daily basis. I also want you to know that we have a eligibility board that sits in place that after everybody has tried to get a job and done the application process and comes with us, that we have 2 civilians that sit on that board, and actually with several from the sheriff's office, and look at those applicants to make sure that we have the right people. I also would like to invite you, and I have an envelope here for Susie and the NAACP. We run a Citizens Academy twice a year. It's 11 weeks, every Monday night from 6:30 to 9:30, and we expose you to what it is that we do each and every day. The City of Bradenton participates, the City of Palmetto participates in this Citizens Academy, and it's a great way for you then to understand what law enforcement actually does. We also do, I've got supper with the sheriff 3 times a year. We're at the Police Athletic League. We, for $3, you can get a pretty good meal, and we do a short presentation about something that goes on in our agency, and then we open it up for you to ask any questions that you may have. I have my entire administrative staff there, from captains and above, to help answer any of the questions that you may have. So if you have a particular problem, again, I will move that toward that particular captain, and you can have a conversation after that meeting, and then hopefully we can solve the problem that you have. So there are a number of avenues in which we try to reach out and continue to communicate with our communities.
Mr. Eager, did you want to talk about relationships?
I would like to think that my office has a great relationship with the community, but it's really not the role of the Public Defender's Office. I will tell you that within my office, the mission statement that I have established is that to champion the accused with the utmost professionalism and humanity. And that is the objective, and that's what I have strived to accomplish with each and every attorney and employee within my office. But as far as outreach is concerned, there are a number of other factors. Again, constitutionally, we are mandated to represent those charged with a criminal offense. But I feel it can't stop there. So my office has been working very diligently. I'm, aside from being the public defender, somehow I got myself appointed as the president of Legal Aid, which provides legal services on civil matters for the 12th Circuit. Also, we've been working very diligently with all parties, and there's been a broad spectrum of individuals participating with the homeless shelter and another. Now I'm talking too loud, I feel like. When I can hear myself, it's very unnerving. And also, the issue I think that is really permeating this community is dealing with the mentally ill. And how they are involved within the criminal justice system as well. But even before they reach the criminal justice system, how can we address their needs and not criminalize those who are mentally ill?
That's a great point.
The first question we have here on the cards, Chief Wells. They ask, you mentioned cultural adaptation in your presentation. Please explain.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you, Pastor.
The card says you mentioned cultural adaptation in your presentation. Could you please explain that a little further?
Yes, sir. What we've done in the city of Palmetto is I believe that even though we have officers working in the minority community on a regular basis, it was important for us to take 2 African-American officers that had been retired from the law enforcement community, had worked for the sheriff's office for 20-plus years, and one had worked for the Baradian Police Department as well, and put them in the African-American community because they can relate to problems going on in the community that a young officer may not pick up on. Young officers that come on the force sometimes are just so concerned about answering calls and making an arrest. Sometimes they don't always pick up on the underlying tone of a community. So I brought them in just to talk to the community, to work out problems, and to make sure that we address what's truly going on in our community, and not to have things escalate before it really becomes difficult for us to get a grip on. So in the Hispanic community, I've got 2 Hispanic officers that work in there on a regular basis, and that's at times more complex because we need Spanish-speaking officers to be able to communicate so we can have victims that can relay that information to us on what's going on. A lot of times in the Hispanic community, they don't report the crime because they don't trust law enforcement because of what they've been through in Mexico, so they don't really want to give information to us. So we've had to work very hard in that community as well to build trust and make sure that they, as victims, give us the information so we can solve the crime. Because without them giving us information, the criminal that is doing this crime will continue to harass them, and we'll never have the information we need to make the arrest.
Okay. Our next question is asking the question of any of you, what are your views on the use of body cameras for officers? Do you think they can be effective with proper legislation?
Well, I'll tell you that we have looked at body cameras, and we actually have money put aside right now for body cameras, and we have tested one. The problem that I have with body cameras, I've said this several times, is our public record law. To say that every incident that an officer records has to be released to the public and anyone else who wants to have that, I believe is going to be challenging. And we're not talking about criminal investigations where you have a crime that's occurred or you have an internal affairs investigation where you want to release that information to whoever because they need to have it. We're talking about simple investigative calls where I go into your house or I go into your house as an officer to handle a domestic-related incident. Not that anyone has committed a crime, we just got a call that you and your wife was having a loud discussion. It sounds like something's going on. So this officer is capturing every private moment, every conversation that you're having as we're in there. People just want to gather that information and then take it and put it on YouTube or what. I just don't see the use for that. Criminal investigations, absolutely. Internal affairs investigations where we have an officer has done something or we want to get the facts out there, yes. But just every single call that we go on that may embarrass people for no reason, I don't feel that that's necessary. And we have to change the law to really protect innocent people from having their face smeared all over our internet.
I think the question also addresses the issue of proper legislation. Given proper legislation, do you still see these same issues?
If proper legislation deals with public records law, yes.
The only other issue that I've seen, once it gets corrected, is that it's just not the issue of sticking a body camera on an officer. There's the expense of all the cameras, there are servers, there's retention of that information, public records requests that come in. We have a camera in every one of our cars, and I can tell you the public records request for those videos out of those cars is humongous. So it's probably also going to require the agencies to hire people to just gather all this data and maintain this data. But I like Rick, have some money stashed aside and are not opposed to body cameras.
Sheriff?
Well, we're not opposed to body cameras either, but obviously the legislature needs to do a good job of developing some policies and procedures in regards to everything that's been mentioned here. We've actually got a couple of vendors that are coming in to give us a couple of demos. Right now we have cameras in our traffic cars for the DUI investigations, and I can just tell you from those cameras alone, as they have just set up here, the public records requests are phenomenal that we have to have someone that's involved actually running copies of those to provide them all the time. And then if perhaps the deputy gets out of his car on that traffic stop and the video's working but the audio's not, then the defense attorney or the public defender's office wants to know, well, what happened? Well, it was a malfunction of the system. Well, no, it wasn't. You probably turned it off because the person was saying something that you didn't want him to hear. So you get into all of those avenues as well. There are a lot of issues with body cameras, but how great would it be if my violent crimes task force, a group of 5 or 6 with a sergeant, ended up at a homicide investigation and the interviews were going on, and we're talking to people in the crowd and getting everybody talking, and they've got their body cameras on, and everybody telling us, well, we didn't see anything. And then after they're not happy with the way things are being investigated and there hasn't been an arrest, then 2 weeks later it's, oh, well, I remember this, and this. So now we've got, we've got that body camera that tells us that, well, initially you didn't see anything, but now all of a sudden you've seen everything. So there's 2 ways, and obviously on both sides of these issues, that you have to look at these things. But we are nowhere close to getting this, and especially if the legislature puts their hands on it.
Well, like with every idea, there are good and bad aspects to it. And I do see it as being a good idea, but subject to tremendous abuse. It's not only the officer with the body camera, but I think all interrogations should be videotaped and audio taped from start to finish. These are recommendations that have been made. So it goes beyond. I would also love to see cameras in the courtroom so that I can be scrutinizing not only the performance of my attorneys, but also the behavior of the judges and prosecutors. So when you put things on camera, it's amazing how behavior changes. But sometimes for the bad, because it does diminish sometimes the frankness of conversation. So again, and I can certainly sympathize with the idea of the public information requests and the inundation of agencies for people going on fishing expeditions, and it becomes incredibly costly, and again, where do you want to dedicate your energies and times? The thought that the legislature will get their hands on it, I'll pass on any comment on that.
Okay, how can we stop the rash of police killings and killing of unarmed citizens? I know that's an easy one for y'all to answer.
Well, you know, even after reading the news accounts of what's taken place in Ferguson and New York City, even after reading those, because we're still not getting all of the information that's available, it's a little bit difficult to sit back and try to talk about people and why they did what they did and under the circumstances that they were placed in. And I don't want to get into a debate about what took place in Ferguson or New York City, because I think everyone in this room has their own opinion about what should or should have not taken place. But there is a YouTube video that most recently came out, and it was an activist, and I believe it was out west somewhere, who actually was leading the protests against the unarmed person that was killed. And then they invited this activist, the law enforcement, to come and take part in a shoot, don't shoot situation. And they actually took him out. And I sent that video to Susie Copeland and others. And it changed the perception of this activist after he was placed in the position of shoot, don't shoot under the stress that law enforcement officers are put into. So you have to keep your perspective, and I really have a difficult time trying to give you my comment on specific events unless I know about those specific events, and I've actually been totally immersed and involved in them.
Well, I will make a comment about, they are less likely to occur on the police side if we have well-trained professional police officers. And that takes time and money from government to make that happen.
Okay, Mr. Eager, this is one for you. If you got stopped by law enforcement and you have your license, your registration, your insurance, can they threaten you with a car search and nothing coming out of your car, calling the dog in? Can they call the dog in after they can't find anything naturally? First of all, if you give them everything.
I'm sorry to say that that's kind of a convoluted question that's kind of difficult for me to follow. If you have been lawfully stopped, and we're making the assumption and that lawfully stopped because there was either a traffic violation or for whatever reason, the next stop is if you are required to provide identification, you have to provide your driver's license and proof of insurance. From there has to be probable cause to hold you. Probable cause meaning that the law enforcement believes that a crime may have occurred. Now, if there's the smell of marijuana in the vehicle, that is sufficient probable cause for law enforcement to call in. They can either ask to search the vehicle, and if it's denied, they can, within a reasonable time frame, they can call in a dog, canine, for purposes of establishing, because if the dog alerts, that gives them probable cause to search. But they can't just search your vehicle. And again, this is where we fall back to the issue of body cameras. What is the conversation? Was there consent to search? Was there denial of consent to search? These things can resolve themselves, but just a stop for no reason whatsoever, no. I will emphasize that whatever happens on the street, the law enforcement officer is always right. That I will stress. Beyond that, if you want to challenge it, that's where I step in. That's the purpose of the public defender's office or legal counsel. But to have an argument on the street is the worst thing. And I guess I would like to go back to the question that was asked before, because that's where addressing the Ferguson situation, what happened in New York. It is a culture of fear that we have developed in this country. And with that culture of fear, it is the fear of black youths. It is also the fear of law enforcement. And both sides, nobody's right if everybody's wrong. And so it really comes down to something like what we're having here is the conversation to realize law enforcement doesn't want to oppress anyone. That's not their intentions. They're operating sometimes in a culture of fear as well as to what they have to deal with, and vice versa. So if we have this conversation, I believe that if we recognize the problems that we're confronted with, I look at those countries who have suffered the greatest amount of oppression, a country like South Africa or Chile, or where they've had truth and reconciliation boards, where there is an honest conversation. Those things, that's where the healing begins, and that's where you can resolve these problems.
Can I expound on the traffic stop?
Go ahead.
Okay, so stopped you for running a red light. I asked for your driver's license, registration, insurance card, which you need to produce for me. Then I go back to my car, and while I legally have you detained because you ran that red light, and whether I'm going to write you a ticket or write you a warning, if I have the suspicion that you may have drugs in your car, and while I have you legally detained, I can call a canine and have them walk around your car. But if before that canine gets there, I'm finished writing my ticket and I've given it back to you, I cannot detain you any longer just for that dog to come and smell. And let's use the same scenario, stopped you for running the red light, driver's license, registration, insurance card, and I ask you at the end of my stop, where I've given you a written warning for running the red light, do you mind if I search your car? You do not have to allow me to search your car, and I cannot search your car. So I hope that answered the question maybe a little bit better.
And there's a caveat there. They cannot legally search your car.
No, correct.
Because it does happen. Having had some experience as president of the NAACP, we've seen a number of cases where through internal affairs, it was determined that it was an improper search. So that does happen from time to time. But know your rights is what they're telling you. And if you know your rights, then you don't have to defend yourself on the street. That's why we have laws and courts and organizations that can stand for you, such as the Public Defender's Office. The next question asks all of you, would you agree to be more involved on a day-to-day basis with the community? And I guess this is attend more community events.
Well, I think we are very involved at this particular time. We've all been involved with community events since I can remember. I mean, I've been the chief of police for 4 years, and I go to every event that we have in this county, along with my counterparts. But we even have events in the city of Palmetto on a very small scale that I attend. So I guess the answer would be, for me, if we had an event every day involving the community, I would try to be there every day. I think that we have a lot of events that we must attend to build relationships, and I never want to miss those. But the only time I will miss those is when I have very important things to handle at home, like maybe my anniversary, which I'm sorry, but I'm going to take the chance on that one. I'm going to go home for that one. But so for the most part, I'm going to be at those events.
Okay. And I think in fairness, all of these are family people, and they are at a lot of public events, and I can say that as a testimony, because I'm at a lot of public events, and I see them there. And I think one of the things we can do is, rather than being myopic and standing in our little shell, we can probably do more by getting out to the events and encountering them there, rather than demanding that they come to you all the time. Sometimes we can do it better by going where they are, and then, like this setting, and you have opportunity as you pass in the hallways, as you take breaks, as you eat meals. How good it is for us to dwell together in unity. Does the Legal Aid Organization assist ex-felons with the restoration of rights? Since none of these men are from Legal Aid,
Well, actually,
maybe they might know.
You're wrong because I'm the president of Legal Aid that covers Sarasota and Manatee County.
He's not from Legal
and
Aid.
that is not one of the functions of Legal Aid, although it is one of the things that the Public Defender's Office will do in an attempt. We have disenfranchised a huge portion of our population in this state. And we're only one of, I believe, 3 states that continues permanent disenfranchisement after you have served your sentence. Right. So I think that we, instead of worrying about individually working for the restoration of a specific person's civil rights, we need to legislatively change it so that it becomes automatic.
As a former NAACP president and executive committee member, I know in the early 2000s we fought and got that and stayed. It was in the 90s where there was automatic restoration of rights for nonviolent offenders. And in your most recent administration, wiped that off the book even after Chris and those fought to get it back on the books. So your job, if I can give you an assignment, is to talk to your legislators. They're the ones who can pressure the governor and the cabinet to lift some of those restrictions. You've got organizations that are fighting, like the NAACP and the SCLC and others, but they need you, just like law enforcement needs you to be a part of the team. It's not an adversarial thing. We need to move forward as a team. And once the communities and these other organizations come together, you'll be surprised how quickly we can move the markers. Why are mugshots of African Americans being used for gun practice? And are officers taught to shoot to kill? And if so, why?
I'm sorry, I didn't, the first part of the question.
The question says, why are mugshots of African Americans being used for gun practice? Are officers taught to shoot to kill? And if so, why?
For the city of Bradenton, we don't use mugshots of any particular race. We use a blank silhouette type target we shoot at, so just a silhouette of a human being. We don't shoot to kill. We train our officers to shoot center mass, and that's to stop the immediate threat and it's a threat that would cause serious bodily injury or death to somebody or the officer themselves. So although we do not train to shoot to kill, we train to shoot to center mass to stop the threat.
Well, I guess I would ask the question to the audience as we talk about this, because this always comes up as far as a deadly force situation. If there is someone that's pointing a gun at me, you want me to try to shoot and wound them? Is that what you want? Because I'm telling you that anyone that's shooting or pointing a gun at me, that's a deadly force situation. I'm going to protect myself, or I'm going to protect someone else from being killed. So that's what we're trying to do. And when we talk about shooting to defend ourselves, that's what we're talking about. We have a direct threat. We have someone pointing a gun at us, and we're trying to eliminate that threat. If I try to shoot this person in the leg, well, a wounded person can still shoot. A wounded person can still kill me. So that's what we're trying to do. I mean, there's different ways that we handle other violence. It doesn't always have to be with a firearm, but if someone is pointing a gun at me, that's the way we're going to defend ourselves. Yeah.
You know, if you ever saw these things...
Excuse me 1 minute. I ask that you refrain from yelling out. Allow these gentlemen to answer your questions, and then if there's a follow-up, pass it to me, and we'll get it answered, okay? Thank you.
You know, if you ever watch these television shows on Channel 7 said, what would you do? That's exactly the scenarios we have that we teach our officers. What do they do when we're faced with these type of situations? These are computer simulated situations. We have such a computer at the city of Bradenton. you're free to call us up to come in, and we will put you in those scenarios. And you can see the split second that the officer has to decide whether or not he has to use deadly force or not. And just like the video the sheriff sent out the other day, once you go through those things, you see what exactly is going on, because the first thing that guy did was to shoot an unarmed person that law enforcement wouldn't have shot.
Okay. The next question kind of ties into some of this about the shoot to kill part, but in this case, it's speaking of the Gardner situation in New York. And they said the whole world saw that video, but nothing came of it, and that's an opinion, of course. Wouldn't it be better to have a civilian review board than to try and handle it internally or as it's being handled? Anybody?
Well, I guess I come from Washington, D.C. in my younger youth there. We had a civilian review board. The problem I saw with the civilian review board was the civilians were not knowledgeable of the laws of what actually an officer could do or what they couldn't do. Sometimes they wanted to discipline an officer when they were legal in doing what they were doing, and the chief of police for Washington, D.C. still had the final say on what happened. So although I'm not opposed to civilian review boards, it would have to be done in such a way that just broadens the communication and gives the citizens an understanding of what happened and why.
Also, you would not be familiar with our general orders, our policies and procedures of the agency. And then let me just say, if there is a particular problem with a use of force that is, or anything for that matter, you know, the open records law here in the state of Florida, you can come in and get a copy of anything and everything, including employment records and past disciplines. And I would just like to say that we have a professional organization where we work. We're accredited in the jail with the Florida Model Jail Standards, the Florida Corrections Accreditation Commission, the American Correctional Society. We're accredited on the law enforcement side with the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies, the Commission for Florida Law Enforcement Accreditation. These accreditations are not something that you just earn. This is something that we prescribe to every day. There are a number of standards with each one of the accreditations. We are also accredited with our crime scene and our chemistry lab. We're also accredited with our bomb squad. So we're a professional agency. But if you have a particular issue or problem, then you need to be calling us and letting us use the avenues in which we have placed through our professional standards unit to investigate your particular concern. Because we do that as part of the accreditation. Whether the complaint is anonymous, by telephone, by email, by letter, in-house, and walk into our front desk. We investigate everything, every complaint that comes to us, because we are a professional agency.
To the public defender, why can't the legislature modify the public access rule as far as body cameras is concerned? Do we need to look at police training as far as self-defense, stun guns, batons, and firearms, going from the least restrictive to the most restrictive use of force?
That sounded like a statement, not a question. I'm trying to decipher what is.
They use the interrogative, do we? So it's a question. Here you are.
Oh, thank you very much. Now I get to do. I don't think that, as far as police training, everybody wants, as was already stated earlier, the most highly trained law enforcement that we can possibly get. But then it comes down to the taxpayers as to whether they want to pay for it. So I will say that on every level, the services that we receive, I think that my experience with these three agencies, they are all highly trained. Do they need more training? Surely. Do the attorneys in my office need additional training? Absolutely. I mean, they're required by our professional licensing to receive additional legal education training and report that to the Florida Bar. So everyone strives to be better, or at least I naively believe that people strive to be better. And is there room for improvement? Absolutely. Even with questions as to a citizens review board, I agree with Sheriff Stubbe. I think that it should be left to the professionals. And I think that maybe out of house, there was an incident in Sarasota County with the city police department, and so they brought in the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Department to review it. And they did a very thorough investigation of the complaint, and they came up with a detailed report. So yes, sometimes it looks a little suspicious from the average person when it's done internally, and I certainly move or suggest that reviews be done out of house. But beyond that, the more training, the better. I don't know how else to respond to that question.
Well, I guess you get an additional opportunity because this one is to the public defender also. Well, actually, it deals with legal aid. Can an ex-criminal get assistance from legal aid? A person with a criminal record. And as a person of color, okay, that's different. Go ahead.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, one of the things that I've been striving for and trying to bring organizations together. We have a number of great organizations in Manatee County and Sarasota County, but they seem to operate almost in silos. So it is coordinating their efforts. It's been my pleasure as the public defender to coordinate and integrate the services of legal aid with the public defender's office. So, the recognition that even within my own office, if you plead someone out to a case, that criminal offense can have profound impact on services that they would otherwise receive. Those who are mentally ill, who plea out and have a felony record, may be denied access to SSI or other housing benefits. The same thing goes for individuals, anyone charged with a criminal offense. So I think that there has to be a collaboration and an understanding as to not just the criminal components or the sanctions that can be imposed on someone, but what those civil sanctions might also be. So we've been working together in specifically the housing, because many people are denied housing or housing benefits if they have a criminal history. So we certainly need to address that.
And this is right in that line, Housing First gives homeless apartments. As a result, they get clean, readjusted, and not involved with crime. Wouldn't this be a good way to get people off the streets? How do you feel about giving felons their right to vote, to become part of the community again? And I don't know if that's an open-ended thing, and that's a personal opinion, I guess, that if any of you want to give it, you're welcome to. I know that's an action that we've already addressed, that the legislature actually is the place.
It is.
Okay. How do your agencies train people to deal with mental illness cases, suspects or calls?
Well, we have the Baker Act, obviously, where if there's a particular problem, law enforcement will respond, will interview that person, try to ascertain if they're going to be a threat to themselves or others, and then we can take them into custody and transport them to Manatee Glens, where they can be held up to 48 hours while a doctor looks at them. Also, a family member can actually petition the court for an ex parte order, where you can also get a Baker Act through the court. And once that ex parte order makes its way to the sheriff's office, we will then send deputies out to actually physically take them into custody and then take them again to Manatee Glens. Larry hit on a great issue about the mentally ill. I would say on the low side, 30% of the people that are in my jail, and we're averaging about 950 right now. There's about 30% of those folks that really have no business being in jail because they do have mental issues and they're not on their medication. And had they been on their medication and were receiving services, they wouldn't be in my jail. But then they go off their medication, they commit a misdemeanor crime of shoplifting as an example, and then they end up right back in the system again. We're actually, the Florida Sheriff's Association is actually working with the legislature. We're looking at, and we're working with the mental health community, reviewing the recidivism rates of those individuals that end up in our jail, but the main function and why they're there is because of the mental illness and or drugs that may be involved. Now, this is a very difficult thing to do because of the HIPAA laws, and I know that 15 years ago, we tried to do something here in our own community with Manatee Glens and Manatee Hospital and Blake Hospital, where we knew those folks that were continually coming to the jail, and we were going to have a bracelet with an identification on there. And because of HIPAA laws, we were not able to do that. So there are some hurdles that we have to get over here. But the bottom line is we need to do a better job of treating the mentally ill to keep them out of our jails.
I'd also like to add, we've discussed training, and there have been significant strides in that. We have the CIT, the Crisis Intervention Training Program, that almost all law enforcement is offered, and many are participating in. And that is how to address the individual on the street, how to identify those who suffer from not only mental illness, but mental disabilities, those who are suffering from autism. All of these people have to be treated differently. And it's only through the level of training that they receive that they can recognize and address those issues on the street and in the jails themselves.
That's a 40-hour class that is available several times a year that we put on for our law enforcement folks.
The next question, we have several questions here about the demographics of your workforce, and the questions concerning minorities, especially African Americans. What do your demographics look like, and how representative are they of this community? And what's the process? This question just came up. I know a young lady who wants to be a police officer. Her school SRO said she should go to the military first. Is the military the only pathway? And of course, we know that's not true.
Well, Pastor, we've had an issue lately with finding African-American applicants in regards to law enforcement, and that number has dropped significantly, I would say, in the last 10 years, and really don't know why. We are always competing against each other for that law enforcement officer, the African-American law enforcement officer who comes out of the academy. In fact, as of 2007, our own academy here in Manatee County, they've only had roughly 6 African-American officers come out of there that have passed the state exam that we can hire. A lot of times we have to go outside of the county. In Palmetto, I was able to hire the first black female officer in the history of the Palmetto Police Department, which was quite alarming to me that that was in 2012 and it had taken that long. But Becky actually came out of our academy, and I was very lucky to get her. And then, it's been very difficult. The Hispanic officer, we've been able to find them, a lot easier. They seem to be attending the academies more so than the African American side. And for me, with a city that has such a diverse, culture with Hispanics and African Americans, I've got 8, 9 now with a new officer that just started Hispanics, and I've got 4 African Americans. So my challenge is trying to increase the African American side, and the problem I have is Palmetto is, that's the lowest paying agency in our county. So if I have a qualified officer, they're going to look at the sheriff's office, going to look at Brayton PD, they make more money, they're going to go there. I mean, why wouldn't they? So I have to struggle with that as well.
I believe we all believe that the police department, sheriff's office should mirror the population who we serve. The black population in the city of Brayton is about 15%. We don't have 15% black officers. The Hispanic population is 17%. We don't have 17% Hispanic officers. The problem has always been trying to locate these people and get them hired on board when, just like Rick says, they can go to Tampa and make almost $10,000 more to start. So if they're minority officers, they're in demand all over, and we keep beating the bushes and keep trying to hire more. If we get a hold of a qualified candidate that passes the state exam, we're all after them.
And I'm right along the same lines here. 9.1% is in the unincorporated areas of the black population, and I have 1,169 employees at the sheriff's office, and we actually are above that. I have 11.3% that are African American, but I'm lacking in the Hispanic, where the population is 15.3%. We're at 10.4. So, I mean, it's a everyday battle, and we all sit on the police academy, the local police academy board, and we look at all the applicants that come, and we're just always sitting there saying, man, we wish we could get more, but it's not happening.
You know, part of the problem is getting to the police academy itself, because it costs, what, about $5,000?
$5,000.
About $5,000 a year. And, I mean, how do young people, you know, supposed to go to a police academy, which costs $5,000, and, you know, if they don't have that family support to get there, I think that's part of the problem. We got to come up with a way. I mean, we used to go to the churches and try and raise money for minority candidates, but that has fallen by the wayside too, because the money dried up. But it's all about money, I believe, for minority candidates to support them while they go to the police academy.
Okay, Mr. Eager, after a person is released from prison, can you explain the process for that felon to obtain their right to vote back?
The actual details escape me at the moment, but it is a rather difficult process where you do have to petition the parole commission, and which only convenes, I believe, once if not twice a year, and only takes less than, and I hate to speculate or guess at the numbers. I know it is less than 1,000. It might be as few as a couple of hundred. So that means of the thousands of people that are released from DOC, there's only a handful of people who even get to have an opportunity. The waiting list, from what I understand, is decades before you would be able to get your civil rights restored, which is why we need to address it legislatively.
Okay. Back to the issue of minority patrols. They want to know, Sheriff Stubbe, how many black patrol officers do you have on road patrol in their ranks?
Without pulling my personnel, I wouldn't be able to tell you that. I can tell you I have a black major. I can tell you that I have a black captain, 3 black lieutenants, and then from there I can't give it to you.
Okay. And how many patrolmen do you know off the top?
I can't.
Well, who would they call to get that information? Your
Personnel.
office? Call personnel, okay.
Extension 2134.
All right.
And the main number is 747-3011.
Okay, we have more questions that we can ask in the allotted time. So if you haven't gotten your questions in, have mercy. Okay. Do you have any follow-on plan when the minority officers you have retire? And are people being groomed to fill those leadership positions?
Well, I can tell you what I've been doing. I've been waiting for them to retire from Sheriff Stubbe, and then I take them, I bring them over, because they have to wait a year on state retirement before they can get back into law enforcement if they want to, so I bring them over as soon as I can.
There's a phenomena that is going to take place. For those of you that have kept up with the Florida retirement system, about 5 or 6 years ago, the legislature threatened to do away with that. And those people that were then available 5 or 6 years ago to get into what's called the DROP, the Deferred Retirement Option Program, they did that. My agency this year will lose, I believe it's 14, and next year I'm going to lose even more. And some of those, I didn't see Captain Waiters here, but Lieutenant Morrell is in that group. Captain Waiters is in that group. Major Williams is in that group. But there are a number of folks that I'm going to be losing in the next 2 years that is going to be, the whole face of the sheriff's office is going to change.
Okay. Yeah, I truly think that we're going to have to start going out and do, like Chief Raz spoke about, we're going to have to start being able to sponsor some of these young men and women that are out there. We're going to have to. We're going to have to go recruit them, and we're going to have to sponsor them and get them in there.
What would you all, what would be most helpful from the community standpoint to ensure that you have an adequate pool of minorities?
We know that it's a great suggestion, and perhaps the NAACP would like to take on sponsoring a couple of applicants to the police academy. And now, in addition, now, if you have someone that actually wants to be a corrections deputy, we actually hire them and we put them through our corrections academy. We'll run our own academy. So that would not be an issue of money. That would be an issue of whether or not you want to choose corrections versus law enforcement, because we actually put you through the academy and you're working, you're getting a paycheck. So that's always available as well.
So not only the NAACP, but all these community-based agencies, we probably need better communication with them as to your needs, so that they may be able to provide you with a pool. We want to turn our attention real quick to youth programming within your departments. Are there any Explorer programs, adventure programs, anything like that that you have in place that would inform young people about law enforcement opportunities?
We have an Explorer program. We've had it as long as I've been at the sheriff's office, and it's a great opportunity to get the kids there. Those persons that actually facilitate that program are law enforcement and corrections deputies at the sheriff's office, and it's a collateral duty that they take that on. In addition to that, we have the Police Athletic League, where we provide football, basketball, baseball, boxing. All of those things are available through the Police Athletic League over on 13th Avenue.
We also have the Explorer program. Even though it's a Police Explorer program, you don't have to be a police officer when you get out of the program, but that's where we got our last two minority recruits from, is they grew up with us through the Police Explorer program, and then we were able to hire them on as a full-time police officer. So that's a good starting point for young minorities if they want a police career.
Okay, another question here involves community policing programs. What do we have in place? What are you doing in that area?
Well, I think we all have community policing units. That's one of the main reasons why I have Jane Austin and Hubie Robinson in our city is 100% community policing. But community policing is such a catchword anymore. Really that involves the entire agency. We all preach to our officers that community policing is what you do when you're working inside that community every single day. They all should have that philosophy. We do have specialized officers and deputies that come out and just really try to work with different organizations and groups within that community, but that should be an overall philosophy that is done daily, and that's what we try to preach to these young officers when we hire them, is that it's not about serving and working in the community, it's about being the community and being strong in the roots of that community.
Another question is police conduct in executing an arrest. Several cards here mention the fact that they use profanity and scream loudly at the people and all that. I don't know how aware you are of this, and if that is in fact the case, but would you like to address it?
Well, I guess I'll start off. We teach and train our officers to use the minimal amount of force necessary to make their arrest. And they should, no matter what's going on, whether it's an arrest situation or anything else, they should be professional. And we preach that, their mouth is the main thing that gets them in trouble. And so we tell them to be professional at all times. If that's one of the things for police complaints about misuse during arrest, it's not like if you file a complaint, it's like the court system where you have to prove it beyond a shadow of a doubt. We look at when somebody files a complaint, and we call it the preponderance of evidence. And really all that is for somebody like me to sit down and read the story about what happened. Is it more likely that it happened than not happen? And that's the level of proof we have to go with. Sometimes these things are sustained, sometimes they're not. But we need constant feedback to hold people accountable.
Okay. Anybody else want to address that?
Well, I would just say that when that happens, we have to be notified. If we're going to be able to do anything about it, we have to be notified so we can do an investigation. We do not tolerate that. It is against policy. We certainly do not want that occurring in our community, but we have to be made aware of it so we can investigate.
And you can do
When
that
citizens, go ahead,
you
Sheriff.
can do that through our professional standards unit, our internal affairs unit.
It's interesting. I've got a card here that talks about the fact that what is the process for citizens to make known their concerns when these kinds of things happen. And several cards ask about citizens review boards, internal complaint systems, external complaint systems. What is it? Can you answer that quickly?
Well, we've kindly already touched on that.
Yes, you did.
Obviously, if you whatever the complaint is, if you call our internal affairs or our professional standards unit, we look into every complaint that is given, and we give you a response back when we're finished with that investigation. So,
Well, this card here in particular talks about being independent of the departments. We found this helpful in the last community I was in. So is there any independent agency that can look at a situation from a citizen?
well, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement can certainly look at anything from the citizens if it fits into what it is that they are charged with doing.
Okay, so if it's criminal in nature, then they should call the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. They are the agency that actually can investigate law enforcement agencies in the state. Is that correct?
Right. You can also contact, the Florida Attorney General if you have a complaint, and Pam Bondi. That's something but that's usually, it's going to be sent down to FDLE. But if you're not happy, and there are other steps that you can take other than just us and FDLE.
And I want to add, when it comes to filing a complaint, yes, the Bradenton Police Department has an official complaint form, but we'll take it over the phone. We'll take it if you just want to write a letter, if you want to send an email, or as long as we can start the process. So it doesn't have to be anything formal other than you letting us know who you are so we can come interview you and take a statement.
I've been signaled that we'll have to let that be the last question, but I want to just kind of throw out there that there are other questions here concerning privatization of prisons, which I know that that's kind of beyond the realm of this panel, and the Attorney General decision to, what's this, I can't. Seize assets. Oh, on the seizure of assets. There was a concern about that, and I would ask that person to direct that directly to them. A lot of people, we've had 3 or 4 questions in this arena about what the citizens can do to help law enforcement solve some of these unsolved crimes and murders in our community. And I think that goes back to some of the earlier discussions you heard about snitching and resistance to providing information. It begins with communication that we talked about at the very beginning. You've got to be willing to come forward and so forth. And also, there was one other question came up about remaining anonymous. And if I understand Crime Stoppers,
Yes,
Mr. Eager,
sir.
am I right?
Yes.
In that regard, if they go to Crime Stoppers, they can't be forced to identify themselves?
That's correct.
That's correct.
Oh, you don't know? Okay, is that correct?
That's
Yes.
correct.
Okay, so we want to get that off the table. And several people have offered suggestions relating to scholarships for minority officers. I think you addressed that when you pointed out that if they can come in through the corrections system first, it would be paid for by the sheriff department. If they come in from outside and go through police training, then it's the individual's responsibility. So that is another thing. We've hit civilian review boards. The one we didn't get to deal with very much was domestic violence. And I'm going to give you just a minute to talk about what's going on in the area of domestic violence. And I think that will kind of touch on everything that came up here.
Well, I'll say that we have probably, in regards to domestic violence, law enforcement has received the best training, especially over the last 5 years that we've ever had. Early on, we may have not have always made the best choices in regards to the victim, but that has changed, and we are very aware of the needs of the victim during a domestic violence dispute. We have, Major Connie Shingledecker here with us with the Manatee County Sheriff's Office. Her and her group, along with Heather Doyle from the state attorney, they teach us annually on anything that's changing in those regards. But I'm not sure where the question is going, but I would just tell you that we, as law enforcement, when we get to the scene of a domestic violence complaint, we take appropriate action. And if we have evidence of a crime, then the suspect will be arrested. And that's not always the male part. So whatever has to be done in that case, and then we make sure that the victim is taken care of and given the proper information and safe house information, so she does not have to remain in that setting for any longer than she wants to. But we give them all the information they need to remove themselves from that violent encounter.
I agree with Chief Wells. We have come a long, long way from going to a domestic violence situation and have the husband and wife put their hands on our badge and divorcing them right then and there. We're much more professional and educated on how to handle domestic violence nowadays.
Well, I want to thank each of you for coming this morning and participating in this process. And let this just be the beginning of the community dialogue. I know Sister Copeland has plans to engage you more often and to try and create more communication channels. It's imperative. If we're going to address the concerns and issues of our community, it begins with us talking to each other and hearing each other. Not talking at each other, but actually dialoguing with each other so that we can start to address the real issues. So I thank you for your time and consideration. I'm going to bring back Sister Green, and she's going to have some comments and a presentation, followed by Ms. Pearson. God bless you and have a great day.
Thank you, Pastor.
I promise you I'll be very brief. Those of you that know about the 13th Avenue Dream Center, you know that our motif is to build dreams and change lives for the many at-risk youth that we serve through all of our programs. And in August of 2013, we had a very unfortunate incident in our parking lot during our Pee Wee football game. But we wanted to take this time, which is probably the most fitting. We recognize that there are concerns on both sides of this, so this event was necessary for us to gain an appreciation of the perspectives from both sides. So what I wanted to do at this time, for their diligence and support of what we do and the thing that happened in Operation Maximum Response, I'd like to present to Brad Stubbe in recognition of your loyal and dedicated service to United Community Centers, Inc., and for protecting and preserving our dreams. We'd like to give that.
There's Susie.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And for Chief Razalowski, we have one that says, in recognition of your loyal and dedicated service to United Community Centers, Inc., and for protecting and preserving our dreams. Chief Raz and his officers, when we fall, they're here at our practices. After all of that, we probably were like Fort Knox. We were like the most safest place in the world to be, and that was all because of you and your staff. Our partnership with Manatee Elementary, we have some special letters of thank you from our kids to your officers.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that.
I would like to say first a special thank you to our panelists up here. Thank you for taking the time and being concerned enough about our community to come and support this effort. Okay, what I would also like to say is that, okay, we've asked law enforcement questions. So my question to you, as Pastor Holly has already stated, okay, there's cards on your table. Write down, because Sheriff Stubbe, Major Williams need mentors, male mentors out at the port. So if you can be a mentor, because it's going to take all of us working together. It's not just about law enforcement, but it's about all of us coming together, giving back, helping each other. Okay? And that's when success comes, is when we do that. And what these meetings are about is building relationships, working together. That is how crime comes down, when we work together. And very quickly, I just want to share with you a tent story. And you tell me, okay? I had just left a meeting with Pastor Jerry over there and Chief Wells over there and a North River Project meeting. And we have those meetings to work in our community to make our community better. Okay, I was leaving, and I stopped at Walmart. And if you look at my trunk, it opens, okay? I had just purchased this tent because Mass Feed the Hungry, this program that Chief Wells worked with us on the Panama Police Department, and they stole my tent out of my trunk at Walmart. And I'm going, oh, Lord, I'm just whining. So I called the police department. And so the officer came out. And I'm still whining. Oh, they stole my tent. I need my tent for me. I feed the hungry. And so, but anyway, she went back to the police department. And by the time I got from Walmart to my home, my husband told me, okay, the Palmetto Police Department is on the phone. And I went to the phone, and the officer said, Miss Shirley, go purchase you another tent. We're going to pay you for that tent, Miss Shirley. Okay, go on. Okay, why do you think they did that? They did that because they work with Miss Shirley all the time at our center. So this is what we're talking about, building relationships. They work with us at the center so they know what Miss Shirley does at the center. They work with May I Feed the Hungry. They know why Miss Shirley needed that tent. So those guys, those officers, took that money up and they bought me another tent. And that showed me where the heart was. That showed me where the heart was. It's in the community. And they come over Thanksgiving, Christmas time. They bring our guys bicycles. This is what relationship building is about. All of us working together, supporting our community. And this is what it's about. And this is how crime comes down. Because, see, the clients at our center, they see Chief Wells all the time. They see police officers over there all the time. That builds trust. That builds trust. And they feel like they can reach out to them. And that is what we're trying to accomplish here. And we're just starting, and we're going to continue. And so, and I thank all of you for attending. But please, write down on one of those cards and tell us if you can tutor, mentor. They need that at the port, don't they, to share? They need that. So I want to say thank you to all of you, and we're going to continue this thing, working together. And Deputy Daniels worked with us on from the Sheriff Department. Captain Waderston works with us, in our center. And she's there just in and out. Oh, Miss Shirley, what you need? I appreciate that. And that is how, and they see her all the time, so they're not afraid of her, they see all the time. So that's the relationship we're trying to accomplish here. So I want to say thank you so much, and thank you, Chief Webb, for all you do, and all the rest of you. Thank you so much for everything that you do. So, all right. And so, Chief Raz, I can't pronounce your name, but Chief Raz and some people said Chief Raz and Sheriff Stubbe. I got to get with you all, too, about a little thing that we're going to be working together with Chief. But anyway, I just want to say thank you again so very much for coming and being a part of this. And this is not the end. We're going to continue. And thank you so much.
Well, there's such a maelstrom out there of problems in regard to law enforcement all over the world and everywhere. But it's good to come back to your local community. And I think be reassured that the people who serve us have our best interests at heart. And the more we can educate in that fashion. The other thing is a healthy community in medicine and a health community in crime are very similar. They work together. You saw how mental health crosses over. It needs a deeper discussion and more understanding for our young people and our old people like myself.
Well, I thought it was a very open a discussion, that allowed the community to ask a lot of questions of law enforcement, things that they may have had on their mind or their opinion of law enforcement. And I guess one of probably the most biggest issue that exists in the minority community is the rights of those who've been in prison to get their rights restored, and that has been a big issue. Seems to be even more of an issue now than ever before, is the ability to be able to get that done. So, when you know that law enforcement doesn't really mind someone getting their rights restored, it's just a matter of getting those who have that authority, that power to do so, to really look at that more thoroughly as to the length of time that it takes and the right of the individual.
First of all, when we talk about, we have so many more prisoners with the crime count, it's the percentage of the number of people you have that we want to talk about. We have a growth that's unbelievable in Florida. Everybody wants to live here. We have to accommodate these things. So you have to take into consideration, you've got to be prepared. And unfortunately, people don't want to hear about impact fees and what it costs to build and provide good housing and all of the other amenities that we need. The major problem of the last few years that's concerned everybody has been our school system and our young people. That's our preventive measure. That's our future right there. And I think it's going to be a hard task to bring forth the kind of things that we need, but I think we're prepared for it, and that's why it's important, as Gwen says, to bring this kind of not just a dialogue, but a full core discussion in the community on it.
I think the community policing is a great idea, in having them more visible in areas so that they can respond and even keep some things from even happening by their presence is a great thing. When you have such a mixture in a community and you have so much new growth coming in, it's a challenge. It's what it is. It really is a challenge. And then there are mindsets of folks who thinking just do not seems like everyone else. Those are real issues to try to combat, and I have to, watch my own self sometime when I'm talking about. I like to say the brain just not working, but that's not, but that is not good. It's just that how they perceive things and how they want to perceive things is really a challenge to get them to know that some things just not right. Some things you just don't do. And taking of someone's life, no one has that right to do that. And to put yourself in that position, to deal with that constantly. And sometimes we want it both ways. Sometimes we want law enforcement to do their thing, and then sometimes when they do their thing, we have issues about, well, they didn't have to respond that way. And I always say, you got to figure out which side you're on, and how are you going to deal with that.
It seems old-fashioned to talk about family, school, and church, but if we continue to neglect the fact that those institutions are there And they need that kind of help. They need a lot of help, because we can't persuade a child to do something when his model out there is not a good one. And you can't expect a law enforcement officer to go out there every day and protect us when these unreasonable things that are happening right now. So it's good. Let the families know. Let them know the responsibilities they have. Let the school system know that, and be cooperative with the school system and help. And I think those things will open up the eyes of everybody.